So, hi, John. How are you?
I'm good, Esther. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for being on my podcast. It's such an honor to have you.
Oh my God, I'm so excited to be here. It's so cool to talk some of this like well-being stuff with somebody else.
Yeah, I know, right? Because I feel like there's not a lot of popular channels yet on YouTube that promotes this kind of lifestyle and positivity.
Yeah, and it's that's an interesting choice of words, I guess. Lifestyle. I mean, yeah, it is something that people kind of choose to go with, but really, it's kind of for everybody, and that's kind of the purpose of my channel that I host as well. Is that
Yeah,
I'm not a professional at all. That don't get me wrong, I'm not a professional, but I'm just somebody that is concerned about that for myself, and this is something that we should all be dealing with as well. I mean, we have doctors that talk about our physical health all the time. Why are we not talking about our mental health as well?
that's a good aspect to point out. Actually, I've obviously watched a lot of your videos. I'm very inspired too. You
Well,
seem like
thank you.
a
I
very
appreciate it.
passionate person when it comes to a lot of topics. So, well, today we want to talk about the topic that you pitch about how our perception kind of affects our behavior.
Yeah, it's something that I've been, I guess, considering a lot lately. A long time ago, way back in the day when I was in college, we had to read Stephen Covey's Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, and I picked that up again just recently, just to kind of give me a refresher. And before he even gets into any of them, he talks about the idea of paradigms and perception and how it can just be such a radical thing to think what I've been conditioned to do in the past or what I've been conditioned to see doesn't mean that's the way it exactly is all the time. So really got me thinking, like, you know what? If view somebody acting a certain way, um, maybe I see a parent yelling at their kid, and maybe my conditioning says, "Oh my God, I can't believe they're doing that right there." But what if that parent is struggling to make ends meet, and this is the absolute last straw of the day, and they've dealt with so much pressure and they've been such a good parent up until that one little moment that I just happen to be watching and I just happen to be observing. Who are we to judge that? Because that is just our perception that we've been ingrained to do. Doesn't mean that it's the actual truth.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like is like one of those really interesting thing that's like you have to be able to catch the right momentum to kind of perceive it in the right way, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Oh no, totally. It's I mean, it's just like a lot of the kind of mindful stuff that you have to be open to it first of all before you can actually practice it. If you're closed-minded and you view this whole mindfulness and paradigm shifts and difference in perspective as kind of like buzzwords,
Hmm.
then you're going to be closed off to it. But yeah, you're spot on though. Like once you get that ball rolling, then maybe after witnessing that parent, maybe you start noticing other things. Be like, well, maybe I haven't been seeing that the way that I could be seeing.
Yeah, I agree. And well, one thing that I wanted to ask you is like what we said about how perceptions are so different. How do you think cultural background kind of affects the way we perceive things?
I think it definitely has something to do with it. Yeah, I mean, we shouldn't be so naive as to say that everybody was brought up the same way in the same culture with the same societal norms. There's differences. I mean, we're both halfway around the earth and we're
That's true.
talking about possible differences in cultures. It's just how it is. If you travel to another country, that that there are some things that you could do that might be possibly seen as a negative in that culture. Um, but I think when it comes to just perception of what other humans are doing, and I preach this like a lot in my last video about we're all humans. We should view each other just as humans, and all people on this earth are just trying to live their best life, live to improve, to provide. And I don't know, I just think that judgment isn't really even a cultural thing. Maybe it's a little bit more normal in certain cultures to be, I hate to use the word judgmental, but I guess for lack of better words, judgmental. But even then, there's a point in time where we reach maturity enough to be able to say, hey, you know what, that might not be exactly how I saw it before.
I'm assuming that that's one of your morals, your personal morals. You seem very passionate about
What's
it.
that? Trying to accept everybody as doing their own thing. Yeah, it definitely wasn't that way. And that's honestly one of the big reasons why I started my channel is that I found myself being kind of in those traps, being harshly judgmental to other people without even noticing that, I don't know everything about every single person in their situation. None of us do. So, I mean, who are we to judge? And I used to be really cynical and really judgmental about that. And I didn't like who I was because of it. So I kind of started the YouTube channel because I figured that there are probably other people that were like me. And I wanted to hold myself accountable to not going back in that place too.
I think you're talking to one of the ones that you meant. I think I'm also guilty for doing that in a way. I think
But
everybody is, not gonna lie.
it's really hard. We're inundated just with negativity throughout media. I mean, we live in an age where media is so prominent and we can't escape it. It's part of our lives all the time, and social media is part of our lives all the time. And you want to talk about a place where people judge each other all the time? It's social media. And people have, 7, 10, 15 different apps where they're essentially scrolling through. Oh, I can't believe she's wearing that. Oh man, I can't believe they're voting for this person. It's nothing but judgment. So, I mean, we've been kind of trained to be that way, but the good thing is we don't have to be. I mean, we can also make that conscious decision to not be that way. Just try to keep our lives in balance with the constant media blitz that we're doing as well.
Yeah, totally. I agree. And about this social media thing, I want to catch up on that because, as you know, the world today revolves around social media. I don't think
Like,
that I've met any human with no social media platform. That's kind of impossible. So I wanted to ask you, how do you think social media have affected our perception in a way, and just in general?
yeah, it's really interesting. Like, okay, so I do have social media. All right, I've got an Instagram, I've got a Snapchat, I've got a Twitter, and they're all linked to what I'm doing on YouTube. So I'm trying to utilize those as just strictly a platform to promote what I'm trying to promote. And like I said before, kind of keep myself accountable, being public about it. I, Again, I wasn't always that way. I'm guilty about wanting to get likes, wanting to get comments, wanting people to look at whatever I was putting out on social media and go, "Ooh, wow," because that does make you feel good, but it's not a lasting feeling. It's a very short hitting feeling, and it's not realistic. The thing with social media is that it's a double edged sword. For what we post, we're not always putting our true selves out there. I mean, there are filters on apps for a reason. It's to make us look as good as possible. And people go on Facebook and they only put the exciting stuff they're doing. So when other people check it out, like that's all they see. They're like, oh my gosh, John's living this incredible life. Look at all these Facebook posts he does. But that's like a glimpse. That's not your life. That's just the like top tip of the iceberg of it and just like the absolute best. So on the flip side of it, like what I was really bad at, is I would check out, friends' social media or even like celebrities and stuff, and I'd be like, wow, those people have their stuff together, and I'd get really jealous, and I would get just okay. I guess I would just get really jealous and kind of get down on myself for not having those things. But that's not their entire life. That was just the absolute tip. So again, it's like this perspective. It kind of comes back to perspective. Like if we understand what social media is for, and I'm not knocking social media because I have it, I like to use it, I try to use it as a platform. It is a cool way for people to connect with other people. I mean, we wouldn't be here having this conversation if it wasn't for social media. Okay.
That's true.
And yeah, and there's just a lot of really cool things as long as we keep that perspective that it is not the definition of us, but it's just part of us. And then we just try to be true to ourselves when we post as well. Easier said than done, though.
That's true. Thank you. That's a very specific explanation.
Yeah, yeah,
I love how
that's
you're
me
so
being long-winded.
precise in every single thing. You're like social media.
Yeah, well, let me tell you about that. Well, I don't know if you saw it, but I put a video out about social media a couple weeks ago,
I've
and I
watched
talked
your recent ones.
yeah, yeah, it was a few weeks ago, and I talked about how it can be dangerous. Like I didn't want to just go out there and say like get off of social media, it's terrible because it's not. I mean, it can be really beneficial. Um, but you got to be careful. Like you got to keep everything in balance. My whole concept of the video is that I got really big into how many subscribers I had on YouTube. Like I got caught up in it. Like there was a time, I'm a relatively new channel. There was a time where I started getting more and more subscribers. And I was like, this is pretty cool. And then I wanted more and I wanted more and I wanted more and I wanted more. And like I just noticed one day, I was like, my goodness, I am checking my phone constantly. And that's when I decided just to hang it up for a day or two and just completely unplug. And it was really, it just kind of hit the reset button and it kept everything in perspective that the social media world isn't the world. It's just that little chunk of the world. And that was really big to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's a digital world. I mean, we revolve around it. Doesn't mean we have to live in it.
Yeah,
There.
yeah, yeah. I mean, we're still humans. Like this is definitely an increasingly digital world, and especially with the pandemic and everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people having to do virtual communication. Nothing really still replaces. Oh God, this is going to be scary with COVID. A handshake or a gesture or reading a person's personality when you're face to face with them, like literally face to face with
Mhm.
them. So I mean, the virtual stuff, there's so many benefits, but it's really hard to replace that human interaction.
Yeah, that's true. And you know how we talked about the negativity aspect of social media? Let's kind of jump into like the positive aspect of, how you mentioned that without social media, we wouldn't connect either and
Yeah.
people wouldn't be as open-minded. So, what do you think are some positive aspect of social media that affects the way we perceive things?
Yeah, no, there are definitely positive aspects. This is so cool because it's always coming full circle because we're talking essentially about perspective, and this is an awesome place for it because if you've been tripped up by social media before, if you felt the negativity, if you felt jealousy or you felt hatred from other people on your platform, if you have that perspective of what you're doing it for, you're going to bounce back from that a lot quicker, or it's not going to affect you as much. And then you'll be able to start seeing the positive. It's that perspective change that you keep your mind open, your eyes open, and it's kind of along the lines of just being more mindful of the situation that's going on around you. I do this silly little rant at like every single video at the end. It says, "Don't be afraid to be positive." And one of the things I say is it's not so much just being kind of like rosy colored glasses or being just kind of like everything's okay, but it just keeps your mind open to receiving the positive things. And I realize how horribly off track I'm getting. I swear I'm going to come back around to your question. Um, but but if we have that openness in our mind, like yeah, we can definitely see some of the positives of social media. Um, there's it's really cool. Like one of my favorite things to do on my YouTube channel is to read comments on my videos. That's like one of my favorite things to do and people will comment and be like, "Oh yeah, I think this and this." I'm like, "That's a really cool idea." And you find people with your like-minded interests, and you can engage in conversation, and you can get ideas from them. You can get inspiration from them. There's a lot of accounts I'll follow on Instagram, so my feed is a lot of inspirational stuff, and like, oh, you know what? That's really cool. So you drop a comment, and then all of a sudden you're kind of chatting it up between people that are talking about well-being and talking about positivity, and maybe something gets brought up that you hadn't considered before, and like, you know what? I'm gonna try that. I started. Oh, oh, this is gonna sound a little out there, but I started meditating like 3 or 4 weeks ago, and that was not. I mean, I'd obviously heard of meditating before, but it was something that I never really considered until I saw some accounts I follow on Instagram talk about the benefits of meditation, and I thought, you know what? I'm gonna at least try it. You know, what do I have to lose? You know, my conditioning before, my perspective before was, oh, meditating, especially in the US, a lot of people will kind of view that as being way too far, way too liberal, or too far to the left, or radical, or not grounded in reality. But you know what? If it's positive and it helps people, I was definitely bound to try it. So yeah, there's definitely positives there. You just have to be open to
Yeah, that's nice. So about meditating thing, I kind of want to jump on that. How does that impact you in a beneficial way?
them. It's it's easier said than done. I kind of equate it to being like physically fit, because that's part of my channel as well, and I'm a believer in kind of like holistic well-being, so like
Mm,
physical fitness, mental fitness, emotional fitness. And when you're striving to be physically fit, you got to get into a routine. It takes time to build the habit, and it's not easy at first. Holy crap, is it not easy at first?
I mean, let's talk about it. It's hard.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, when I started kind of like paying attention a little bit more to physical fitness, it was like 10, 12 years ago, but it took me a while just to get into that habit of doing it. So with meditation, it's kind of the same way. Like, you do it and you'd feel pretty decent about it, but you hadn't built the habit of doing it. So you're not in a big rush. And it's silly. And this is why it's like physical fitness. Okay, so if you go and you do a workout or you run, after it, after you're done, you feel good that you did it, and your body starts feeling better, but you still haven't built that connection in your brain. Like, hey, let's go do that again. It just doesn't happen. You kind of have to make yourself do it. And that's kind of where I am with meditation now. Um, and I've been doing like a gratitude journal with it too, and that's new to me. It's not perfect. Let me just put it that way. I'm trying to do it every day, but it's more of an every other day. Sometimes it's 3 or 4 days between. But I will say it's kind of nice because it. I always view it when I'm in meditation that I have a chalkboard, and that's my mind, and it's just got all these different like math problems, like from a day or two or three a day's worth of like school, and kids are just doing all their problems on the chalkboard, but nobody erases it. And the meditation just kind of takes this big eraser and just starts wiping it away, so that when the next instruction starts, everybody can see what you're working. So it's hit or miss right now, but I keep trying working on it.
That's good. I mean, at least you had that in mind.
Yeah, and again, full circle, it's perspective. You know, um, it's funny because there have been days where I haven't meditated and I get really down on myself. Like, "Oh, why aren't you meditating?" But that completely destroys the whole point of it. It's that you have the perspective that, okay, I didn't get to it today, but I'm going to do it. Like, it'll still be there. Like, just because I didn't do it today, it's still going to be there, and that's okay. And when you do get to it, it'll be good.
I'm sure it will, but it's going to take a lot of time.
And you know what? We've got that time. I mean, there's no time
That's true.
for, yeah, I mean, there's no like specific time frame that you have to do to improve yourself. You can do it whenever.
Yeah, that's the one thing that I think I learned from quarantine in general, being able to have like a self schedule rather than following everyone else's schedule. Do you realize that from yourself?
Yeah, yeah. It's I always kind of call it organic thinking. Like you let things happen when you're ready to make them happen. I mean, of course, like we want to push ourselves, but if we need to do something on our time and we know that's going to make us the most productive with it, then if we can, that's what we should do. Like if it's getting done still, then get it done on your time.
That's true. So, well, following into what you said about progress and time, you give advice to a lot of people. I know that. So, I wanted to ask you if you can specifically give an advice for the younger generations or, millennials on how to make that shift change in their lives and change their perspective into a better one.
Yeah, I think it's I hate to contradict things, but it's like the most simple, difficult thing to do is to just take that step back. Every time that you catch yourself making an observation or decision about a situation, try to see it from a different way. I always try a lot of times way more less successfully than others is like traffic. Okay, so traffic stinks, and driving in traffic stinks, and there are jerks everywhere on the road. But what if the guy that cuts you off, what if they're in a horrible hurry to the hospital and to see their kid, What if that? But meanwhile, you're just sitting in your car wanting to give them a certain signal, but that's a perfect opportunity to say, maybe it's not exactly how I see it because there's more than one viewpoint of a situation. At least two, if not, just tons of them. So, try to take a step back from it. I mean, of course, detach from the screens every once in a while. Not all the time. Because, I mean, our phones are part of us now. They just are. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to do, it's hard to function without it, but it's possible. One of the things I mentioned in the social media video that I put out is that when you take your phone and you turn it off or you put it in another room and you don't pay attention to it for a while, it makes you anxious at first because you're so worried about missing something. But I guarantee every time you come back to the phone, those things that you were worried about missing, they're still going to be there. Nothing fell apart because you put your phone away for an hour. So I detach from the screen every once in a while. And then I think one of the big things that's helped me, especially in the last year or two, is go outside. You know, take a deep breath in. Go on a hike. Just anything that gets you out of a temperature-controlled environment. You know, soak up some sun. I mean, we as humans weren't meant to sit inside for 20 hours a day. We were meant to spend 16 hours a day outside, if not more. So that stuff helps keep your mindfulness intact.
Well, that's not necessarily quite possible now, considering the pandemic, obviously.
And it depends on what part of the world you're in as well. Where
True.
I am, being outside is, that's all fine as long as we keep our distance. But if not, if you have to stay indoors, and I know that's where we were a few months ago, that they were not even recommending anybody go outside. But if we can, maybe it's even simple as stepping outside your door in the sun for 5 or 10 minutes every once in a while, just so that we can experience some fresh air and see the outside world again. And that helps us gain more perspective.
John, I actually want to ask about this COVID situation. I'm sure that you have a lot of opinions towards it.
Uh-oh,
So,
watch out. We're gonna get flagged on YouTube if we talk about it. We'll have to explain it.
so how do you think is what's the right perception to have during this hectic time and it's like an assuring nothing is really stable at the moment? What kind of perspective do you think we should have?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. I'm a teacher in my full-time job, so I work in education, and where I am right now, we're just getting back to school. We did our remote instruction for a while, and we're just now getting face to face for the kids and the families that opt to do it. I bring that up because when we were getting prepared to do that, we had to go through like every single situation before it happened, and it drove just about everybody insane. And it's continuing to drive just about everybody insane because you can go over like a billion different scenarios of how the next day is going to play out, or the next week, or the next month, or the next year. And that is just going to drive you nuts. And what a lot of people will see is that if it doesn't go the way that they think it should, then people start to complain about that. But you know what? We're all in this time where nobody has experienced this before. I mean, unless they were around in what, 1918 during the Spanish influenza, I don't think many of us have pandemic experience. So we just, for me, it's just, we have to let those lie. I'll listen to one person's opinion about it that might be more open everything up, and I'll listen to another person's opinion is shut everything back down and keep it shut down until it's safe. And you know what? Neither of them are wrong. Yeah, there's no right or wrong to it because it's just such a strange time that we are kind of going through right now. So it does kind of feed back into what we've been talking about perspective. Is that, if we're gonna be completely 100% on one side, who are we to say what is right or what is wrong? There's too much to it. It's beyond me, and it's beyond. I honestly think it's beyond everybody. So we just take it as it comes. We try to make the absolute best of the situation that we have because that's all we can control. And then we just respect each other's opinions from there.
Yes, that's true. Thank you.
Mhm.
So, well, I kind of want to close it up because I think we've discussed a lot today, and I
Yeah,
feel
yeah.
yeah, and I feel like the audience is probably like trying to process all the information you
And they're
get.
like, why does this guy keep talking? Jeez, does he not have? Where's the mute button on Zoom? Come on.
So, what do you think is one advice that you would give everybody just on perspectives and just going through this hard time in general?
It's I wish there could be just one. I wish we could just say it all boils down to this one thing, and if everybody does it, we're great. But if it was that easy, we would already be great because we would have already done it. But I really think just keeping an open mind, realizing that, hey, you know what, we're all human, but we're all different humans. Humanity is interesting. I mean, it's just fascinating that we're all the exact same in that we're human, and we have life struggles, we have life joys, and it's cross cultural too. I mean, we have different values in our different societies, but we still share humanity. But at the same time, we're all different too. We have those different cultures, we have different societies, we're all brought up differently, we have different viewpoints, we have different religions and educational backgrounds and everything. And both of those things, even though they're contradictory, that we're all the same but we're all different, both of those are awesome. Like, we should celebrate both things. So when we're dealing with this pandemic, we just have to keep that open mind and realize that, hey, you know what? This is going to sound really corny, but we are all in this together. We as a race of humans are going to get past this, and we can get past it. But then say, you know what? This person has got a different viewpoint of it than me, and that's pretty cool that we can have those different viewpoints, yet still share that same common. I think if we can do that, then you know what? The pandemic stinks, but we can get through it, and we can get through it strong. And maybe we have this newfound respect for our culture and our societies that maybe we didn't have before because it kind of got taken away from us.
Yes, that's true. So, well, before we close, I have one last question. I hope that you're
Yeah.
not bored.
Oh no, this is great. This is awesome.
I wanted to ask, so do you have any quote that you personally live by that you want to share to everybody else?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think that depends on the day that and the situation that I'm in, because as a teacher, um, God, I'm like a walking quote book sometimes, and I think if I have a student for more than 1 or 2 years, they probably start canceling it out because they'll hear the same thing just constantly over and over. I think the big thing with me right now, and I don't know if it's a quote more than like a mantra, that you know what, we're living life. Let's just make the best of it while we can. You know, and it doesn't matter if you're 8 years old or 38 or 68. You know, and there's never a time that you can say, well, you know what, I missed that time, or I'm not old enough to make things better. Just make things better. And that can apply on the macro level to your entire life, or it can apply to like making a good cup of tea. You know, make it the best that you can because you're doing it anyway. You might as well make it the best.
That is right. Life is pretty short and unexpected.
Yeah. And there's always room for improvement. Doesn't matter how old you are or what you're doing.
Are you currently reading any like motivational books that you would want to share, or just any books in general that help you?
I'm still in the Covey book, which is really fascinating. With Covey, he gives a lot of just thought-provoking perspective, and I know that a lot of big companies, a lot of entrepreneurial companies will recommend that reading for their employees so that they get just kind of a more of a worldly view of things. Um, Yeah, I have a book stack and I can't name them off the top. I can't lie and say, "Hey, I'm this huge avid reader," because it's a struggle for me to read. I'd rather watch TV. But no, I'm picking up on them. Um, there was one I would get
You
up
want
and
to
get it.
grab the book,
Yeah, yeah. This the
The Happiness.
happiness trek. And yeah, and it was an interesting read because it what the title kind of implies. It's how to be happy. Patients that people that a lot of really neat things about the perception of selfishness and wanting to be happy, and how we can develop happiness from inward out and then from outward back in. And I know that's just like a ton of buzzwords that I just threw out there, and they might not have any meaning to some people, but it's really cool. It just kind of goes into all these different facets, um, and it talks about the fatigue that we can also have by trying to be happy, because some of us can go about it, I guess, for lack of better words, the wrong way, and not really being content, but trying so hard to be happy that it doesn't happen. I mean, we know that sometimes the harder we try at something, the further away we get, especially when it comes to like our emotional health or like, going to sleep. If you try really hard to go to sleep, you're activating your brain. It doesn't work that way. So that was one that I read a little while ago, and that was pretty cool. Opened up a lot of eyes.
Well, thank you so much for sharing, John, and thank you
Mhm.
for, spending your time to collaborate. I'm sure it's hectic over there.
Yeah, yeah, it's a busy time, but like we said, we're all just making the best of it what we can.
So I'm gonna link everything that John does, which is a lot of stuff, down below. His Instagram and his YouTube channel. You guys can go check him out. He does a lot of motivational videos. And yeah, any other words, John?
hey, but doesn't matter where you're listening in the world. Like we said, you can always improve, and just keep an open mind about everything. Everything. It's not always as we see it.
You should do your slogan at the end of the video.
Oh no. Okay. Yeah, I think I've got it pretty far down by now. Lastly, ladies and gentlemen, don't be afraid to be positive. Being positive is not having your head in the clouds. It doesn't mean that you're oblivious to what's going on. It just means that you have a more open mind to see solutions to your issues. So take care.
Wow. Do you actually say that in class, like if you were teaching in a classroom?
Um, Not that exactly. Um, but a lot of the stuff that is on my channel does come across in teaching, and it should. And a lot of teachers do it too.
That's nice.
I met you in the